There is a strange paradox haunting many lives today: a burning ambition smothered by an invisible inertia. You dream vividly, you imagine success, greatness, contribution, but the body won't move, the actions won't come. You call yourself lazy, but that is a lie. What you're really suffering from is a war within. The battle between the self you could be and the shadow you won't face. Let me reveal to you the brutal truth, so that your ambition can finally breathe and your spirit can finally act. You are not lazy. That label, so carelessly thrown at yourself, only serves to mask a deeper, more painful truth. What you are is divided, fragmented. A war is happening inside you, and no part can move forward because every part is pulling in a different direction. One part of you sees the vision, the success, the power, the recognition, the impact. It burns in your imagination and fuels your hunger for more. But another part, a quieter, wounded part, remains frozen in fear, gripped by doubt, haunted by past failures or unmet needs. You want to move forward, but some version of you is terrified of what forward might mean. That fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, "Rest a little longer," or "It won't matter anyway," or "You're not ready yet." And because that voice comes from within, you believe it, you obey it, you call it laziness. But it is not laziness, it is psychological resistance, born from the disconnection between your conscious ambition and your unconscious pain. This fragmentation often begins early. Perhaps you were told not to reach too far, or maybe no one ever showed you what discipline looked like. Perhaps failure made you feel humiliated once, and now your psyche equates trying with danger. So now each time you try to act, that inner conflict returns. The ambitious part of you pushes forward, but the wounded self slams the brakes. And so you stay stuck, burning fuel without moving an inch. This isn't a flaw in your personality, it is a signal. It is your unconscious mind saying, "Pay attention." Parts of you are missing. Parts of you are still waiting to be heard. You cannot brute force your way out of fragmentation. You must heal it. You must become aware of every voice inside you, especially the ones you've tried to ignore, and invite them to the table. Only then can you act from your whole self, not just the idealized image you present to the world. So no, you are not lazy. You are at war with your unlived life, and until you reconcile those lost, hidden pieces within you, progress will always feel like a struggle. But once you make peace with them, once you understand, integrate, and unify, you will unlock an energy you never knew you had. Then action will come naturally, purposefully, powerfully. The part of you that sabotages your drive is not random, and it is not weak. It is intelligent, ancient, and rooted in everything you have tried to suppress. This part is what Carl Jung called the shadow, the collection of traits, impulses, fears, and memories you have rejected or denied because they did not align with how you wanted to be seen. But what you push into the dark does not disappear, it festers, and eventually it moves through you in ways you do not recognize. When you tell yourself, "I will start tomorrow," or "I just need to feel motivated," or "I'm not ready yet," it is not always truth. It is the voice of the shadow. It speaks in hesitation, in distraction, in chronic procrastination. Not because it wants you to fail, but because it is afraid of what success would demand from you. It fears exposure. It fears responsibility. It fears the death of who you have always been. And so, rather than let you risk change, it convinces you to stay still, by any means necessary. This inner sabotage doesn't always feel like fear. Sometimes it shows up as perfectionism, demanding you do it just right before you begin. Sometimes it disguises itself as logic, saying, "You need more time," or "Others are already doing it better." And sometimes it simply robs you of energy, making the smallest effort feel like a mountain. All of this is the shadow at work, defending its place in your psyche, clinging to the familiar identity you've outgrown. The tragedy is that the more ambitious you are, the stronger your shadow may react. Because the bigger your vision, the greater the threat to the parts of you that feel unworthy, unsafe, or unprepared. These parts do not disappear with affirmations or surface-level motivation. They must be seen, understood, brought into the light of consciousness. You must ask, what part of me is resisting this path? What am I afraid will happen if I truly succeed? Facing the shadow is painful. It means acknowledging your envy, your fear of judgment, your unresolved grief. It means realizing that your blocks are not external. They are deeply personal and often deeply hidden. But here lies the secret. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your unlived power, What sabotages you now can, if integrated, become the very fuel that drives you forward. Your doubt can become discernment. Your fear can become focus. Your rage can become discipline. But only if you stop fighting it blindly and begin listening. Begin understanding. Begin owning every part of who you are, even the parts you're ashamed of. Your shadow does not want to ruin your life. It simply wants to be seen. Once you make it conscious, it will no longer control you from the dark. And then, your drive will no longer be divided. It will be whole, relentless, unstoppable. You love potential because it is safe. It asks nothing of you except to dream. In the world of potential, you are limitless. You can imagine greatness without risking failure. Imagine love without vulnerability. Imagine mastery without discipline. Potential allows you to live in the fantasy of who you could be, without confronting the discomfort of becoming it. But here's the brutal truth: action kills potential. The moment you begin, potential must die, and in its place is born something far more real, imperfect, vulnerable, and incomplete. And that is terrifying. Because as long as you don't act, no one can judge you. You don't have to face criticism, rejection, or the possibility that you're not as extraordinary as you hoped. As long as your dreams remain inside you, they are untouchable. But this safety is an illusion. In truth, by clinging to your potential, you delay your evolution. You delay your life. To act is to enter the unknown. It is to leave the comfort of who you are for the painful birth of who you might become. This is why you stay stuck. Because becoming requires a kind of death. The death of the dreamer, the perfectionist, the child who believed life would unfold effortlessly. It demands the death of comfort, the death of ego, the death of the fantasy that you are only one good decision away from everything you want. The person you imagine yourself to be, talented, wise, successful, cannot exist until the version of you who hides behind planning and hesitation is let go. And letting go psychologically feels like annihilation. That is why you hesitate. That is why you freeze. Not because you don't want success, but because a part of you knows that once you begin, there is no turning back. This resistance isn't weakness. It's grief. Deep down, you are grieving the version of yourself who will never exist once you take action. You are grieving the idea that your potential could have remained perfect forever. But here lies the paradox. Only by acting, by letting potential die, do you make space for true growth. Potential is a seed, but unless it is planted, unless it dies in the soil, it can never become a tree. The dream must die for the self to live. So if you feel stuck, ask yourself, what part of me is afraid to begin because it knows something must end? What part of me is still addicted to the high of possibility because I'm afraid of being seen trying and falling short? And then, let that version of you go. Let it die, not with fear, but with reverence. It brought you this far, but it cannot take you further. Your life will not change by thinking about it. It will change the moment you step into the unknown and accept the death that must come before your rebirth. And that, not potential, is where your power truly lies. Your environment is not separate from you. It is a living reflection of your inner world. Every object you keep, every habit you maintain, every person you surround yourself with is an outer symbol of your internal condition. The clutter on your desk, the chaos in your room, the noise in your social life, these are not random. They are manifestations of what your psyche is holding and, more importantly, what it is avoiding. Carl Jung taught us that the psyche speaks in symbols. But it does not only speak through dreams or art, it speaks through your reality. Look around you. Is your space stagnant, unclean, overloaded, or uninspiring? Then it is likely that some part of your inner life feels the same. When your inner world is fractured, anxious, or unresolved, your outer world naturally takes on the same shape. That which you do not consciously process, you unconsciously project into your relationships, your choices, your home, your schedule. You may believe you are trapped by circumstances, but often, it is the psychological blueprint beneath those circumstances that traps you. You remain in draining environments because they feel familiar. You tolerate chaos because it mirrors the emotional chaos you've normalized. You avoid cleaning, organizing, or building structure in your life not because you're lazy, but because to do so would force you to confront what that mess represents. Decisions not made, pain not faced, dreams deferred. People rarely realize this, but even your digital space, your phone, your social media, your playlists, your tabs, is a psychic echo. When it's full of noise, distractions, and mindless consumption, it usually means you're trying to drown out something you're unwilling to hear from within. The more overstimulated your environment, the less access you have to your inner clarity. And the people you invite into your life, they, too, are mirrors. If you are constantly surrounded by those who drain you, belittle you, or keep you small, it may be because some part of you believes you deserve it, or fears what would happen if you outgrew them. You do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. And if you want to change your external world, you must start by changing the internal signal you're broadcasting. This is why transformation must begin within. Changing your job, your city, or your relationships won't save you if your psyche remains untouched. You will simply recreate the same patterns in new environments. But when you heal internally, when you organize your thoughts, face your fears, forgive your wounds, your outer world begins to shift naturally. You no longer tolerate environments that dishonor your growth. You begin to design your life with intention rather than chaos. The environment is not the cause of your stuckness. It is the consequence. And once you understand that your surroundings are not holding you back, but merely showing you where you are stuck, you can stop blaming them and start listening to them. Your world is always speaking to you. The question is, are you paying attention? Discipline is not punishment. It is not a rigid system meant to confine your freedom or suppress your spirit. In truth, discipline is the sacred structure that allows your deepest self to emerge. Without it, your potential remains fragmented, scattered across time, lost in distraction and indecision. With it, you begin to gather the pieces of your psyche and forge them into something coherent, something purposeful. Discipline is the scaffolding that holds up your transformation. In the Jungian sense, individuation, the process of becoming your true, whole self, requires more than introspection or self-knowledge. It demands action. It demands ritual. It demands you show up to your life consistently, especially when you don't feel like it. Not because you're chasing some external reward, but because through repetition, you cultivate inner alignment. Every time you act with discipline, you signal to your unconscious, I am ready to become. But discipline is uncomfortable. Why? Because it challenges the ego. The ego wants pleasure, safety, and instant results. Discipline asks you to delay gratification, to endure temporary discomfort for the sake of something higher. It asks you to face boredom, fatigue, resistance, and continue anyway. That, continuing anyway, is the birthplace of personal power, not because you force yourself through, but because you are choosing a higher allegiance not to the ego, but to the self. Discipline is how you prove to yourself, over and over, that you are trustworthy, that you can carry the weight of your own life. When you wake up early, when you write even when uninspired, when you move your body, when you say no to distractions, you are reclaiming authority over your psyche. You are no longer a victim of your moods or circumstances. You are becoming sovereign. And here's what's often missed: discipline is not mechanical. It is spiritual. It is the daily pilgrimage to your potential. It is how the formless dream becomes real. Without discipline, your visions remain trapped in the imagination. With it, they begin to take form in the world. And through that form, your identity reshapes. You do not need to know exactly who you are becoming. Discipline reveals it over time. In fact, true freedom is not found in doing whatever you want, whenever you want. That is chaos, and chaos breeds paralysis. Real freedom comes when your actions serve your essence, when you are no longer ruled by whim or fear, but led by purpose. Discipline is the gateway to that kind of freedom. And perhaps most importantly, discipline makes the unconscious conscious. It takes the vague desire to change and brings it into physical reality, through action, through effort, through choice. Every time you choose discipline, you reject fragmentation and move toward wholeness. This is individuation in motion. So if you feel lost, confused, unmotivated, don't wait for clarity. Begin with discipline. Show up even if imperfectly. Do what needs to be done, even when it's small. Because discipline, practiced daily, becomes devotion. And devotion to your path is what ultimately reveals the self hidden beneath the noise. So the next time you say, I'm ambitious but lazy, remember, it is not laziness you are fighting. It is fear, fragmentation, fantasy, and the shadow self. But if you have the courage to look inward, to walk through the discomfort, to choose growth over stagnation, then you will no longer be stuck. You will be transformed.